Hi, welcome everyone to the World Education Summit 2020 Higher Education 17th edition. So here we are going to start our next panel, that is COVID-19 to fuel next wave of innovation in higher education. So we have esteemed panelists from the Pan India, Professor Dr. Naveen Seth from Gujarat Technical University, Mr. Adit Tubalia, promoter from APJ, Dr. S.S. Mantha from KL University, and Dr. Pankaj Mittal from All India Universities. So, Mr. Adit Tubalia will moderate this session, and I request to all the audience to if put up your questions so that we can get back to the moderator if they so that they can put your all your answers live at this session. So, Adit sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I am honored and intimidated to be moderating this session. The luminaries we have on this panel have a long history for their excellent contributions to education, and I'm very delighted that we get to talk about this extremely important topic. Just to set a little bit of context and background, I think all of us have heard the great news around the world. Several vaccine candidates have been proved to be very effective against COVID-19. Each government has started thinking through and implementing a plan, and we expect this entire pandemic to hopefully wrap up by March or April of next year, once we are able to get all the doses out to at least the vast majority of the population who is at risk. Uh, if you remember where we started on this, we all first knew about the pandemic somewhere, beginning of March and February, and it's only middle of March, perhaps almost at the end of last year's financial year, where things started breaking down in earnest. Now, since then, of course, we have all suffered through, innovated, had post-traumatic pandemic syndrome, as all of us in every field have grappled with the implication. And education has been deeply impacted. I still remember in the first 2 months, all education leaders from around the world trying to get together to understand how do we operate in this temporary environment. And then the sudden dread when everybody figured out that this is not a 3-month, 4-month thing. This is going to be there for at least a year. The good news is, of course, is that it felt as if this would go on forever, but we've essentially just lost about a years of time, and in the greater scheme of things, that isn't so bad. I think the big silver lining is that we have done an international experiment where everybody has been an active participant, whether they liked it or not, in really looking at next generation education delivery. I think all across the world, and even in India, the regulatory authorities as well as individual institutions have had the opportunity to relook on how they not only deliver education, but how they are thinking about education. A year ago, I was at many of these conferences, and we were still deliberating whether distance education or online education or any of this sort has a place in a formal structure. I think all of us have proven that not only is it possible, but there are some added advantages to be had. Now, it would be very sad and foolish, given two events that have happened that have completely changed the entire ecosystem, that we don't take advantage of this. It would be very sad that if we go back, come March and come April, to the way we did things, which, if you're honest, I don't think was really working for creating a 21st century education ecosystem. I don't think it was really delivering on the promises we had made our students. So what I'd love for this panel to talk about is that, keeping in mind now, and with full hope and regard that this pandemic should be over by March or April of next year, what are some of the things that they would love to take forward And one of the brilliant contexts that have happened for India is that our new national education policy has come out simultaneously during this time. So not only do we have the opportunity to learn from COVID and plan ahead on what's next, the new education policy gives higher education institutions the freedom and perspective to also do that as well. So it's not just that, hey, we've learned all these new brilliant systems and pedagogies and we can rethink how education is done, but wait a minute, all of us are constricted by the shackles of a regulatory system that has been waiting to be reformed for the last 30 years. Now we actually have the opportunity to take those learnings and codify them into our institutional mechanisms. To kick things off, I'd just like to start with a very broad questions, right? Top two things that our panelists think that they really hope we don't lose, things that we've learned, things that we've experienced, insights we have gained, that they would love to continue once we are 100% back in the classroom, once this COVID issue has been done. Starting, of course, with Dr. Pankaj Mittal. Ma'am, your words, please. Two things that you have seen are great insights that you'd feel very sad if we aren't able to keep after this entire COVID pandemic is over.
Thank you, Aditya. Thanks for setting the tone for the meeting. And thanks to ELITS and Digital Magazine for inviting me here. Now, when you talk of COVID and what we learned from COVID and what we want to continue after COVID, first and foremost would be the blended learning. Aditya, I was in UGC for all these years and we were almost pushing our teachers to teach online, means to use blended mode of learning. But our teachers were very shy of learning, teaching online. But we were all surprised when the COVID struck, all of a sudden, all our teachers started teaching online in no time. And then slowly, it is becoming the way of life. Right now, it is only online because of the prevailing situation, because of the pandemic. But slowly, when we come back, you are very optimistic about March. I am not very, very optimistic. We don't know till when we have to suffer because of this COVID. But whenever we come back, it will not be only face-to-face or only online. It will be blended mode of learning. And that blended mode of learning must stay. Our teachers must learn to teach in a flipped classroom model. Our teachers as well as students, they should be working on a way in which rote learning is not promoted, in which we are promoting curiosity, creativity, problem solving, application oriented studies, and also the way we assess and evaluate the students. See, right now the 3R examination, you saw that it was a big challenge for the government to hold. And then that 3R examination, because the offline we could not hold because of the pandemic situation, and online there were many issues with regard to the digital divide, and many students were not having access to either devices or network or the proper bandwidth or even the space to appear online, because you do need a pin drop silence for appearing in an online examination. So therefore, in future, I also feel that the assessment and evaluation will not be a 3R examination at the end of the semester. It will be a continuous assessment throughout the semester, and maybe based on multiple methods. It could be projects, it could be activities, assignments, face-to-face interviews or group discussions, or so many ways are there to assess and evaluate the students, that too throughout the semester. So these two things I definitely think will change and should change and shall continue to remain this way even after the pandemic. One is the way we teach, that is blended mode of learning, and second is the way we assess the students. It should be a continuous assessment based on the multiple ways rather than a 3R examination after the semester.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mittal. I think you've probably summed up what I think all of us would consider the very top two. Keep learning mechanisms going and relook at evaluation. I still remember all those regulations which would still require, an armored vault at the university with all the papers are stored. Then in some cases, armed guards are moving the papers into the classroom, and particularly some of our states which have struggled with that. And now you're telling people that, hey, you can take this valuation at home. right? And once you have that evaluation at home, that completely changes what you evaluate and how you evaluate. Because I know a lot of my friends in the tech industry keep telling me, oh, we have these wonderful online proctoring tools, but they don't work. There's always a way to get around them. And I
Yes.
think that requires a fundamental and drastic change in how we even approach evaluation. Secondly, I'd like to move over to Dr. S.S. Mantha. Sir, you have seen this space not only as an educator, but also as a very senior regulator, and you have struggled through your tenure in trying to have to find that fine balance. From your perspective, Ji, two great things that you have gained an insight or learned that you really wish we all continue post COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you, Aditya. And Pankaj ma'am really succinctly put some of the practices that would go into the next cycle as we probably see post COVID. Some of the best practices will certainly cannot be forgotten. They have to be a part of the system when we return back to normalcy. And these times have actually tested those initiatives that we have been making or struggling to make, and so on. I mean, change happens in two ways. Either you plan a change or you push a change by change. And COVID has actually pushed us to change. I mean, there was no planning, nobody had time to plan anything, and they just had to get into the activity and try and make the best of it. Several teachers have struggled in to get onto online. There is a different pedagogy required. People are used to go to a classroom and teach and have a face-to-face interaction. That still is probably the best way to do things. But what COVID has done is it has compressed the development cycle. It has compressed the implementation cycle of an online mode of learning that we have only been talking about in the past. It has certainly exposed the chinks in the system, and it has made people aware of what really needs to be done. As we all know, the retention time is about 18 minutes in a kind of video, asynchronous kind of learning. And it's the I have seen teachers struggle to the video is switched off, the mic is muted, and you really do not know whether the other fellow is actually listening or doing something else, and so on. And it's almost a monologue which happens over a period of 45 minutes, an hour, and then the teacher is happy that she or he or she has completed the lecture, and the other side there is hardly anything to really assess, and so on. So there is a lot of scope to improve on that count, and any asynchronous mode of learning must be interactive. So you actually need a moderator to bring the two together and create a kind of exchange of thoughts and ideas and so on. So that not being there, it becomes a little difficult to understand how the impact of online learning has been on the education system. But moving into the future, there will always be a debate on what should be that percentage of blended learning that we are talking about, whether it should be 50% offline, 50% online, or things like that. But whatever experience I have had in the last 9-10 months looking at closely at what is happening, probably 30-70 would be a good idea to start with. 30% of online and 70% of offline or face-to-face, where applied sciences are concerned, and where basic and other part of education is concerned, probably a 50-50 model would really work. But moving into the future, that's about the past. Moving into the future, personalized learning is probably something that we are going to see very seriously. And most of the online service providers are already moving into that. I mean, we in a traditional teaching model probably teaches every learner the same, despite their unique needs and strengths and so on. So you will have students who don't complete assignments. You will have students who may be interested in sports. You may be students not aligned with English and things like that. And an online learning model will have to look into those kind of issues. Now, technology may give opportunities for taking ownership of their learning, but the personalized learning that I'm talking about, which will probably become a part of the future endeavors, will be paced to the students' needs, will be tailored to learning preferences, and can take off different learners, take on board different learners, and so on. So therefore, adjusting the pace is required, which means we need to individualize the learning. We need also to adjust the learning approaches, which means there is a differentiated learning that we must talk about. And we also must leverage student interest and experiences. And all this put together becomes the personalized learning that I'm talking about. And there is also another element that will become a serious contender in future education, future online learning modes, and so on. That is the role of artificial intelligence in education, and that will bring in personalized learning, personalized tutors, assess open-ended questions, virtual classrooms, and things like that. So the machine learning and AI and deep learning, they will have a very big role to play in future. And the concept of getting into the personalized learning, I believe, will have a lot of future. There are, of course, several challenges related to online and education concern. There are.
I'll come. I'll come to those. But Suchi, I wanted to give two excellent takeaways that you have put. I think one, this entire notion of how faculty members and professors have stepped up. And I think that is a very interesting point, because, all of us, even maybe, a year and a half, to get any senior faculty member to come on a video call like this, we had to have 2 assistants, and they were struggling with getting the laptop and Wi-Fi. And now I'm seeing, very renowned people just pick up their phone, and now they are having their entire classrooms. They're slowly adjusting. And I think the second thing which you really, really pointed on was this entire concept of personalized learning. One of the greatest failures at our regulatory system and our education system, this is not just India, it's all over the world, has been that we have tried to commoditize education. We've tried to make every school, every college, every university look like a duplicate of each other in the name of so-called good governance, that everybody has to give the same curriculum, the same syllabus, the same thing, the same infrastructure. And that for a lot of people has destroyed innovation. But as Dr. Mantha has sort of told, it's also been deeply problematic for personal learning, because people learn in different ways, different timelines. And I think the great part that we've learned in this COVID-19, as he has put, that it has offered the opportunity of personalized learning long term, and because that acceptability of blended. And Dr. Mantha, by the way, I am very grateful to you for putting a number on blended learning, the 30-70 for applied and 50-50. Whenever I ask senior leaders that give me a specific number, they start going, I don't know, it has to be seen. So I'm very glad you're putting out a number very clearly. At this moment, I'd like to get Professor Naveen Shetty, just focusing on the two things. I know, going third is always difficult because amazing points have already been covered. I presume you agree with our two panelists on their points. But in addition, can you think of 2 more things that you would like to continue beyond April? And sir, by the way, I think all of us are extremely envious of this wonderful background you have with the entire trophy set and everything. Sir, over to you. Sir, you're on mute. You'd have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Namaskar, good afternoon. Yeah, I thanks the Elates and the DL for giving me an opportunity to interact with the those who join in this virtually. Yeah. So you already said, Aditya, that most of the points were covered by my previous speakers, the Mantha and the Madam. So two more things I want to add. One, that you already said that the experts previously to have the services of the some national institutes or some international experts, it is very, very difficult task. Now at any time we invite and they can join and all are familiar. Suppose in my university there are 17,000 teachers. Before pandemic, only 3% teachers, they are using this online mode and other thing. But all of a sudden, and they now change with this digital learning and all this innovative practices. And students are familiar now and the faculties are familiar. So globally, we can take the services of any mentors from any subjects very easily. Second thing, suppose in my university there are 525 colleges are affiliated with us. So sometimes we have a meeting of the principals. It is a very big task, and the principals, those who are coming from across the Gujarat by vehicle, by other means, they spend for a 2 hours meeting. They spend the whole day. And now in this situation, there are number of meetings and very successful meeting, to the point discussion, and everything is there. So such thing to be continued. Even previously digital content is not developed. No doubt there is a Swayam, MOOC platforms are there. But in my university during this 6 months, there are 12,000 video lectures are available on the my university website. Means my faculty, they have developed and they are continuing developing the digital content. So these are the blessing in gas of this pandemic COVID situation. In examination also there is a lot of innovation, means to conduct the exam online mode, and we have the foreign students and other students. But now this by online mode, so many matters were added for live proctoring and other things. So a very good system like the physical mode, the similar way by all this proctoring and other things, we can conduct the exam, and we have successfully conducted the exam. So many things to be continued even after this COVID-19. Thank you.
Dr. Sheth, thank you so much for that. One of the very interesting points I think we're all seeing is suddenly we've gone from, faculty members who can't even do a simple video conference class to now producing their own lectures. And I think every single university has found that the adaptability of its faculty members is truly remarkable. And particularly as you put it, G, I think one thing which is the underlining fact is that for many of our universities, we have students from all across the country and even internationally, and being able to engage with them even while they're at home is something very remarkable, and I think will hold us well as we go down for the next 3 to 5 years and look at the NEP transformation. I want to move on to one of the big issues that all of us faced. All of you have commented on it. On one hand, we have a lot of thought, as Professor Mantha also said it, this new wave of education technology, and I don't like buzzwords because buzzwords hide real a real change, but let's say AI, machine learning, personalized learning, adaptive learning, you can get a buzzword tambola card and check off all the buzzwords all of us like to use. But all of these are, there are very few examples of having delivered on the level of these buzzwords. But we certainly are seeing in 3 to 5 to 10 years more and more of this will start to come. But I think the hidden issue that we have all seen is the digital divide. We had students, and I say a digital divide very broadly, right? And there are three aspects. First, we discovered that we are very fortunate to have had this pandemic in 2020 and not 2015, because in 2015, 80% of our students would not have been able to join online. And I think, the remarkable progress has been made in telecom in the last 5 years that have actually even enabled a large number of our students to actually even join these classes, and a lot of our professors and faculty members to join from home. I don't think this would have been possible 5 years ago. But it still remains that for the vast majority of our country, a vast majority of our students, getting a stable, predictable internet connection is still something which is a faraway dream. The second, what we discovered was that not everybody has a smartphone. The smartphone penetration has become extremely high, but you can't do everything on a phone. You need a computer, you need a laptop, assignments, quizzes, all of these. No matter how much we are pushing for a not just mobile first, but mobile only delivery mechanism, the fact remains is that in most households, there is only still one device which is shared by all family members. And often, as we found halfway through the pandemic, that device is for the breadwinner's office work. And once they had to go back to office, this was no longer available for education. And we've had a lot of string of failures in India in really trying to get devices into the hands of students and find use cases for them. And this definitely is a second big digital divide. And the third a digital divide, which wasn't very obvious, I think, to all of us, although it should have been before the pandemic, was, and Dr. Pankaj alluded to this, how many people have a separate dedicated room in their house which they can give up to learning? India is a fairly dense place. Real estate here is astonishingly expensive, often far more expensive than in the Western world. And part of the digital divide is that it's very nice. You manage to get the device, you manage to get the internet working, and then guess what? You have a family of 5 or a family of 6 sharing a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom apartment or a hovel or a house where they're unable to get that privacy of having to be able to learn, and particularly for those from an inconvenient or I would say unfortunate social economic strata, the ability to go to a college, the ability to go to our higher education, physical campus, be there, allowed them that space and bandwidth to do it. And we particularly saw this with young women who end up getting pulled into household work and chores while they're at home, and family not respecting their education and work boundaries. On that context, would love to ask our members that, based on their experience, how can we start addressing this? My greatest worry is that as we invest in all these wonderful new technologies, it'll still only be available for maybe 5 to 10% of the population, the middle class, the upper middle class, even the lower middle class, who are able to, afford a fast-speed internet connection, afford a computer or a laptop, and afford a physical space inside their home where they can take advantage of AI, machine learning, personalized learning, adaptive learning, and all of that. Dr. Pankaj Mittalji, starting with you, ma'am, what do you think we can do? Is this a government problem? Is this a private problem? How can we as a society start intervening on this? or quite frankly, the real solution is to actually go back to the classroom, and these are very broader socioeconomic problems that have no easy solutions.
I do understand the space is a very, very big problem which people were not seeing as a problem so far. But then I feel that this digital divide issue is not only in India, it is in every country, even in developed countries like USA. We had from AIU 2-3 webinars from, say, one from MIT, one from Harvard, and one from University of Chicago. And all the three I asked about the digital divide, and they all admitted that yes, digital divide is there in every country, including USA. So it is not a new problem for India that we are the only one who are facing this digital divide. Now, how
Dr.
to
Pankaj,
address this issue?
in fact, I'd like to add for our audience, often India is ahead of these countries because of our next generation telecom and phone infrastructure. We have 4G, we have even 3G. Places like the US, once you go beyond urban centers, you don't get 3G, you don't get 4G. So in many ways, the cheap telecom of India, by the way, has the cheapest telecom in the entire world. It may not work all the time, but for sure it's the cheapest. So it's not just a technology digital divide, it is the economics of telecom. Sorry, Dr. Mithila, back to you. So I just want to put a fine point on this, on the brilliant thing you raised.
Even the device penetration is very large in India. The number of mobile phone owners, which is a very, very big people, I mean, large chunk of people are owning the mobile phones in India. So this digital divide is there. So the solution I was talking about, the solution first will be that now you have seen that during the COVID, most of the infrastructure in terms of the brick and mortar structure, large buildings, large labs, all were lying almost vacant. And what was being used was the technology. So I suppose government as well as the universities, whether it is private universities or government universities, in future will be investing more on the technology, more on the devices, more on the networking, more on the having a better bandwidth for your students. One is that. But at the student side, many urban students, they may be having the devices. Rural students do not have access to independent device. Like you are saying, there can be one device for the whole family, but independent device and independent room is an issue. So sometime back we had proposed in one of the webinars that all the corporate houses, if as a CSR initiative, they can take up this initiative of donated device. Like there are many people who are changing their laptops, who are changing their mobiles, and the old mobiles are still functioning, but they want the new ones because they are into it, like new every 6 months. So if donated device campaign can be started by any, say, corporate house or government or university, and then those devices which are collected, if they are distributed free of cost to the rural students, maybe that can address the issue to some extent. So that type of an issue, that type of an addressing of the issue can be there, one by investing heavily on the technology. Second, getting devices on donation, and then as a CSR activity also, and the government can allow companies to have it as a CSR activity to give devices to poor people so that they can have access to online teaching. So that can be another measure. And space, of course, you know that because of this issue that in the homes the spaces are not there, the concept of co-learning spaces has arisen. And now you see there are advertisements where, because now many of the offices have said that, okay, you don't come to office, you work from home. But how do I work from home when I don't have the space or the connectivity? So now this concept of co-learning spaces or co-working spaces have emerged, in which you get a space for say 7-8 hours. Like you go to the office, you go to this particular office for working, you will get a proper seat to sit, you will get a device, you will get a connectivity, and you can work and then come back home. So because of this COVID, new concepts are coming, new innovations are coming. So this co-working spaces which was not there, it has come. Floating offices, like my daughter is working with EY, and now she is saying that in their office the concept of floating seat is there, that you don't have to come to the office every day, but there are some seats in the office. If you want to work in the office, book a seat in advance the previous day, use it and come back. So next day the same seat may not be available to you, some other seat may be available if you want. So there's no concept of fixed seat in the
Dr. Pankaj, I just want to push back on this on one thing. I love the solutions you've given. One, you have said this massive CSR thing can be done off instead of, we have the entire device recycling program. Why can't we have a CSR, give devices away? And you also mentioned this co-learning environment system, which has come out all across the world. Obviously, this is still very expensive. I mean, I think it works again for the lower middle class, upper middle class, where they're able to pay 500,000, 2,000 rupees a month at the very least. Often it's a lot more expensive to have access to these spaces. Where do you think it's the government's responsibility to step in and start creating this infrastructure? I'll take you back, in one time in the world's history, and not just India, there was a notion that creating public libraries and public spaces and museums and amenities for the public was something that the government did, that the public money was spent on creating those spaces. Is this something that belongs to the government to solve, or are we counting on the goodwill of the private sector to come up with solutions?
That only when you interrupted me, that at panchayat level also, there is a connectivity till the panchayat house. So there are, like they call it now e-Chopal, in which the government is giving internet connection, and there can be some devices. So all the village people taking turns, they can come to that e-Chopal and start accessing the resources, or maybe learn online or whatever. So these type of houses, which will be co-learning spaces, can be built up in all the panchayats, because the connectivity has gone till the panchayat level, and it will be very, very easy for the rural children to access that Chopal at a central place without spending on the devices or on the connectivity. So that can really work very well. If at the panchayat level there can be a room which can be which I am naming as e-Chopal, which I heard or saw the concept is already working in some places, so that can be done. But one more thing which Aditya I would like to mention, which helped us in this pandemic and which is going to continue, is the collaborations. As soon as the pandemic struck, we were thinking that all our collaborations will be gone, but it is now totally the other way around. Now what has happened is collaborations are increasing, because for the international collaborations now you don't have to spend a lot, you don't have to spend a lot of time. Also very easily you can connect through foreign professors online. Your teachers, your students can get access to the lectures of foreign professors. Your teachers can be working with the professors. There can be joint research projects, and most of the things can be done online without spending on the air travel or stay or all these things. So one thing which I mentioned at the beginning was the collaborations. That collaborations will be helped in a big way post COVID, and that will be the biggest innovation which will come and which will stay. That collaborations, both national as well as international, they will be promoted due to this COVID online. Aditya.
Thank you very much for that, Ji. And I think that also brings us to Dr. S.S. Mantha. Sir, clearly, you are a futurist. You understand how technology will be transformed. Dr. Mittal laid the case that, look, a lot of this issue can be solved by a lot of very innovative concepts and systems that are now coming in. She mentioned the co-learning version of co-working. She mentioned CSR activities in terms of donations of a device. The government has done an incredible job in the past 5 to 10 years of bringing fiber optics to every panchayat. There is an opportunity there as well. My clear question to you, sir, is that, most analysts across the world and most analysts in India have sort of put that India doesn't have the money, and particularly after COVID-19, doesn't have the money to reach 6% of spend on education as per GDP. Our entire central higher education budget is equal to the annual budget of Harvard University. And I just want you to understand the level of differences. The entire country's central education budget on higher education is equal to one US university. And there are about 20, 30 more universities like Harvard who have similar high budgets. On the other hand, there is a notion that we have to, hope for the future of India on the goodwill and philanthropy of its citizens, that some corporate person will set up something or some CSR will happen. Are we putting the future of our children's hands in waiting for philanthropists to show up, or for funding that will never happen? You had to struggle with these things at the highest level, sir. What is the solution? How do we bridge this digital divide? How do we bring students up to the same level, and whose responsibility is it? And second, the easy answer, it's all of ours, but it has to be someone who is accountable for it. And second, how do we pay to bridge this digital divide?
Yeah, I mean, Aditya, you have made some very interesting comparisons, but you also, or we all must realize that comparisons can be odious, and sometimes they don't really tell you the correct picture. The contexts are different, the boundary conditions are different, and therefore the comparisons may not really hold good. We know the history of, let's say, Harvard or Stanford and so on. So maybe there is no direct comparison in that context. But for all that, we have been independent. I mean, for almost 70, more than 70 years now, we have done pretty well in terms of reaching out to people. And yes, there are several concerns and several problem areas. The COVID has only, like everything, it has disrupted everything, and therefore the challenges are much more difficult to meet today in the current context. But having said all that, there were some questions from you as to what the government can possibly do and what the others can do, and besides the CSR efforts, and that will continue to happen. But that again is very, very, very limited for a country of this size. So therefore, in the past, in the name of e-governance and in the name of government automation, we have created a lot of infrastructure, and the applications were not there, but there was a lot of infrastructure that was created, and the optimal utilization was never happening in that sense. And in over a period of time, the infrastructure that was created it also became obsolete, and new infrastructure came in, and so on. Now, in that context, I would put down a few of the things that a few of the methods that can possibly be adopted in times to come to bridge this digital divide. Like you have said, there are several kinds of digital divide. As far as smartphones are concerned, which become very essential in the current times, there is a study which says that only 16% of women have access to mobile internet compared to 36% of men, and the smartphones percentages go even lesser than that. Now, as far as the addressing the divide is concerned, first of all, the content. There is a very good content available with the third-party providers. Like, for example, of course, I'm not discounting the efforts that have been made on SWAYAM and things like that, but there are also players like edX, there are players like Coursera, and so on. And we need to bring people together to do a collaborative kind of working with them, so that the price comes down from a student's perspective, with the idea of bringing in the best of the content possible to them, which means that universities must come together and pitch a certain pricing with these providers, and so on. So online learning can become fun in that sense. The data analytics comes along with that, and therefore the government can pitch in with a learning management system that it provides for every single institution, every single university on a collaborative mode. The second is, there is availability of devices and bandwidth in certain areas is actually far from satisfactory. So services of BSNL, NIC, and other agencies must be taken, and that will be very, very useful. There are technological solutions that can come up from there. The third is we can certainly look at sanitized mobile vans with PCs. I mean, the internals of a bus, for example, a state transport bus. I'm talking at that level. You pick a state transport bus, which can be, internally modified with to hold PCs and smart devices and workbenches and things like that. They all have to be only roadworthy, because they go to they can be sent to the villages, and the people who do not have space or access to devices, who do not have access points, there are remote locations, lack connectivity, and so on. So these sanitized mobile vans can do that job. The government can provide the access points and so on. Now, if a maximum throughput and minimal interference, which is a major issue in most of these places, is concerned, then for the conduct of nationwide teaching or even conducting exams, for example, the government must come in by providing these 1, 6, and 11 channels in the 2.4 gigahertz ISM band for the best, performance. Even DTH channels, which the government is talking about, can reach the villages. Now, all this technology must be enabled in in a very structured fashion. There is also another option that the government can look at. We have a cable TV network which reaches almost every single village. They may not have food to eat, they may not have a mobile, but they have a TV at home. They have some kind of cable network. So this network must be enabled to provide education content during certain hours of the day, and they can be brought on board with the government sync with that kind of thing. So therefore, there are several methods. I mean, devices and things like that can be got through there for a 5,000 rupee. Just for the final point, just for a 5,000 rupee investment, the government can come out with a tablet which only holds this kind of data, which receives this data, stores the data, and also is useful. The entire capability of a mobile phone need not be done. So these are the places where the government can actually intervene and provide the support. Thank you.
Dr. Mantra, thank you. And again, my apologies to my panelists. We have a very short amount of time. I think, I would have preferred at least an hour one-on-one with each one of you. I mean, some of the amazing thoughts that Dr. Mantha has put through, these deserve at least 10 minutes per to explain to our viewers background, because our viewers may not see this as evident. But what Dr. Mantha has alluded to are a very long-running, small, low-hanging fruits that can have been done and don't actually require a lot of money. Just a small change in policy and how we do. I'd like to share one quick example. Just as a thought experiment. Instead of trying to charge telecom operators massive licensing fees, taking that money and then using it for whatever, had governments auctioned those telecom licenses, taken that money and put it into a telecom infrastructure development fund, where they say this money will be in fact used to further increase how we do telecom, bring fiber to every home, everything. And all it has done has put the telecom companies into debt, has increased the cost of telecom for the average consumer, organization, university, and business, and at the same time not accomplished the level of digital penetration that should have happened. Just a food of thought of a change of policy. Dr. Sheth, we are up against the wall on time. I concede the last 2-3 minutes to you for your words on what can be done by government, by society, as we are moving post-COVID-19. All of us have talked about taking a large number of the digital initiatives forward, right? And I won't get into a summary of all of those, but I think all of us are in agreement. What can we do to make sure that those digital initiatives reach to every single citizen and resident of India, no matter where they are and what their economic background is? Dr. Seth, you're on mute, please, sir.
Yes, in continuation with the suggestion by Dr. Mantha, that Gujarat government has taken a very good decision. Means our student population is very large as far as the India is concerned. So it is very difficult to by donation or by philanthropy way, but government intervention is required. Gujarat government has taken a very good decision. Every students, those who appeared in, those who entered into the higher education, either in the college or polytechnic, they provide the tablet with a 1,000 rupees, means very subsidized way, and it is as per that the some content is there, some educational related materials are there, digital content, and all other things which can be available by online mode and other thing that is possible, but not the fully like a smartphone. But as far as the teaching learning, there is no means it is already there. So such type of the government intervention is required. Gujarat government is giving all students, those who entered into the higher education in the polytechnics, they provide this. It's very good. Otherwise, one more thing is there, that the so many gram panchayat also, they have the dish and the television. So, and space is there. So lot of EduSec is there. There are 31 channels are there. Some regional channels are there, and education program is very nicely going by these channels. So that is also one of the alternate for that. So that is my suggestion as far as the time consent is there. So I think it's okay.
Music.
Yes, Aditya ji, not heard you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. For people's thoughts and suggestions at this time, and what I would recommend all of our viewers and listeners is that as we move beyond COVID-19, all these key learnings that we are trying to do will require an immense support from all sections of our community and society, whether it is in terms of CSR philanthropy, whether it is new government policy. I think all of us are very excited about the road ahead, particularly with the NEP. And I'm confident with education leaders such as those we have met today, this is going to be a journey that will truly deliver on the promises of an excellent aspirational education for every one of our students in our country and of course internationally. Thank you, everybody. Deeply appreciate your being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.